Hello guys, are there good Russians? This is a question I often ask myself as a Ukrainian, and if they exist, who are they, where are they, what are they doing? Of course, these are not millions of those who support Putin and share his imperial worldview. And these are not hundreds and thousands of those who come to kill, loot and rape in Ukraine. And these are not those who develop and target missiles on Ukrainian civilian objects. And of course, not millions of those who remain indifferent, observing war crimes that countrymen commit daily in Ukraine. But even according to a statistical error, there should be some, and I might have identified them. My name is Anna, and I vlog daily from Ukraine since the start of the brutal Russian invasion. So if you're new to the channel, you support Ukraine, please subscribe and help us fight informational war. And my longtime friends, check your subscription status and hit notification button. As you might have guessed, today we will speak about International Legion and those Russian groups that are a part of it, and also various partisan movements that help Ukrainian counteroffensive to be successful. But I would like to start with expressing my gratitude to all those beautiful people who have joined Ukrainian International Legion, traveled from their safe countries to be a part of our fight. And this is both important from the military perspective, but also a very symbolic gesture which demonstrates war in Ukraine, Russian war in Ukraine, is not about territories. It is about the civilizational choice. It is a war between authoritarian regimes and democracies. United we stand, and united we will win. So, some of the Russians did not like Russian invasion and decided to act. First, perhaps the most popular formation is the Freedom of Russia Legion. It was created back in March 2022 and it was covered in media. Various Russian citizens joined it, starting from those who were living abroad, who were living in Ukraine, who traveled to join it, but also those who escaped Russian army and joined Ukrainian. It was very popular on media, and Russia decided to equate it to a terrorist organization, but we very well know that if your global terrorist says you're a terrorist, perhaps that's a compliment and means just the contrary. Subscribe if you agree. Another popular formation is Russian Volunteer Corps, which consists of those Russian citizens who lived outside Russia in Ukraine or in the European Union at the start of the invasion and decided to act. They are also responsible for a number of successful military operations and raids inside Russia like Belgorod, Rostov. We've heard about them and I've spoken about them in a number of my previous vlogs. But today I would like to focus on a new battalion that is shaped from indigenous peoples that are now a part of Russian Federation. The battalion is known as Siberia, and the majority of its members come from Yakutia and Buryatia. We have a beautiful video about the potential dissolution of Russia, where I speak about 21 different national republics that are now a part of Federation. Check this video if you haven't seen it before, because it can actually explain you a lot about different nationalities that are now suppressed inside Russian Federation, and especially how Russian commanders treat them and send them to meat grinders and worst areas during this war, which is a part of Putin's attitude to smaller nations and some kind of ethnic cleanings, which are actually terrifying and once again remind us of the attitudes inside Nazi Germany. So, this battalion is shaped from various indigenous peoples. Siberia has a potential to become independent in future because even in 2014 they have a movement for the federalization of Siberia, and many people who live in the region do not name they are Russians, they say we are Siberians. So now they are working on the creation of this battalion. It's not easy to get there. Sometimes people are observed for almost a year because, well, you cannot trust the Russians. Share and subscribe if you agree. What are these partisan movements and battalions doing? different things. We've heard about them. And also there are a lot of small groups inside Russia or on temporarily occupied territories that work independently, coordinate their work with Ukrainian armed forces and do a lot of help. But we don't name them because of their security and because we don't know all of them. So what are they doing? First of all, they are collecting information about the movement of Russian troops, the movement of Russian ships. We know how quickly they leave the Black Sea because of the dangers that Ukrainian counteroffensive imposes on them and the destruction of by Ukrainian armed forces of Russian air defense systems. Also, they collect information about various factories that secretly work on the territory of Russia on the construction of weapons, artillery stuff, and other needed for war production, and they help to identify important logistics chains. So collecting of information is sphere number one. Also, you've noticed that lots of Ukrainian drones reach parts of Russia that are very far away from the border, and not every drone can fly that far. So perhaps there are people who send these drones to the correct locations, and these are also Russian partisans who fight for Ukraine. Also, a certain separate group are people responsible for the derailment of various freight trains. And just recently, a couple of days ago, a freight train in Ryazan region was derailed and 19 cabins or wagons, what's the correct word, were lost. It was used for the transportation of military things. And this is a general movement, and derailment is also popular in Belarus, and there are Belarusians in Ukrainian armed forces. Let me know, would you like to hear about them in one of my next videos. And another beautiful sphere of work of Russian partisan movements is setting Russian conscription officers, draft officers on fire. You know, there are epidemics of such places getting on fire because people don't want to join Russian armed forces and die in Ukraine. This is the most typical development of a destiny of an ordinary Russian soldier. Just think about that. Many of them were born when Putin was already a president, and now they go in really bad conditions to fight the war they don't understand and die, and Putin is still the president of Russia. Honestly, being an Ukrainian, being targeted daily, I feel blessed to be Ukrainian. I cannot imagine my life if I were a Russian. I would never, no one would like to switch here in Ukraine, which tells a lot. So even living under constant shellings, we prefer to remain Ukrainians and not to be serfs, slaves, and miserable people sent to meat grinders following the commands of a crazy 23-year dictator. This is pathetic. Trolls will like this passage, I know. And if you're not yet subscribed, do. What is the attitude of Ukrainian people about this volunteer military units of Russians and partisan movements? 50-50. I have recently watched an interview, and like many support the idea of such movements. Of course, they will not change a lot for Ukrainian counteroffensive. We mainly rely on our armed forces, but they might be a good continuation after Ukrainian victory to take control over some rebellious regions inside Russia and to finally liberate them from dictatorship and help Russia and new republics reshape their political systems, their civil attitudes. This is a good precedent, but the majority of Ukrainians will tell you, well, we still do not trust Russians and we don't want many of them to fight on the Ukrainian side. Let me know what is your opinion. It's really interesting to know. Thank you so much for your support and for joining my legion of informational warriors. I value that a lot, and we feel the presence of trolls, but we are stronger and united we stand. Thank you for buying me coffees and becoming my patrons. Thank you for your advice and comments that you leave. Subscribe to my Instagram, Threads, Twitter, join my Discord, and we have a beautiful merch collection for Christmas. Go check it. All of our items work well as conversation and starters and reminders about Ukraine. And once again, thank you for standing with us. Slava Ukraini!